Today's sermon is be connected and stay connected and persevere. So let's start off with some quotes from the Bible, because what is important in that last video is not only the perseverance, but fundamental to the perseverance is understanding what is our core value. If we have that sorted out, then we know where we're going. But if we don't have a core value, then we're just plodding along without really any sense of direction or purpose. So it brings to mind a famous missionary in China in the 1940s who accomplished a lot of things. But when he was asked, how were you able to accomplish so much? His answer was, well, I can plod. I can plod. I can just keep going one step in front of another after another. And eventually, when he looks back at the body of accomplishments, it was impressive. So, what are your core values? It is important for us, in this respect, to connect to our source, our Creator. So in here, these two examples in St. Paul's letter to the Philippians, Paul is urging his brethren to connect to God, because there is peace in that choice, in that decision. Oh, I did something wrong. Let's do that instead. So, in his letter to the Romans and in his letter to Timothy, his second letter to Timothy, he's urging the same thing. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Knowing your core values, knowing what is good, knowing what is God's will, this is fundamental to our spiritual health and life. One of the things we see in the world today, especially on the campuses in this country, is this phenomena called the social justice warrior. Now, social justice warriors have been around for eons, since campuses were invented. But what's interesting about this era is that there's no sense of right and wrong, in the sense of a traditional sense of right and wrong. People are so swayed by the mood. They have no fundamental sense of identity, it seems. When people are interviewed as to why they're marching, they have really no idea why they're marching. Why are you protesting this? And when you go into the question, people don't really know why they're doing what they're doing. So this sense of unconsciousness, this sense of not knowing God's will, really wreaks havoc in people's lives. Because now you don't know what is righteous and what is not righteous. Very simply, righteousness is doing the will of God, and unrighteousness is going against the will of God. And if you're not aware what the will of God is, then you might inadvertently be doing an unrighteous thing without knowing it. So it's important, it's imperative for us to know the will of God. Now, of course, we have a loving God, so it's not, we're not dealing with a God as fundamental as the laws of gravity. So, for instance, the laws of gravity, you ask the person, the bystander, why is this man splattered on the road below this 20-story building? Oh, he didn't know the law of gravity. Oh, he didn't know. If you don't know the law of gravity, then severe consequences will result. If you don't know the rules of driving, that in this country you drive on the right side, and in England you drive on the left side. If you don't know that, you could end up in serious trouble very, very quickly. So it's important to know the rules of physics the rules of the road, the rules of the country you're living in. For instance, if you go to Saudi Arabia and you decide to bring your whiskey bottles with you, you might end up in serious trouble the moment you step foot in that country, because there's no alcohol involved. So, knowing the rules, knowing the setup, as Jim Rohn used to say, is important to success in the physical world. But knowing God's will is important for a spiritual, healthy life. So what are your core values? I remember doing this exercise once with this personal growth trainer, I guess that's what he would call it. It was the end of a seminar on something else. Anyway, he comes along and he gives us this chart, and he asks us to fill out the chart in accordance with what do you spend your time doing. So from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, fill out this chart. Just basically do big circles. He gave us 5 minutes, big circles. Okay, I wake up, have breakfast, brush my teeth, get ready, driving, work, lunch, work, driving, spend time with family, bed, sleeping. And then he asked us, okay, what are your core values? What is it that you value the most in your life? And then those of us who suddenly got stumped by that question were like, oh my gosh. And then for the rest of us, we just started to write down, okay, I really value my family, I really value my faith, I really value that. And then he said, okay, compare your values to the time you spend indulging in them, pursuing them, developing them. And then you're like, oh, I really value my family, but oh yeah, I'm spending a little bit of time with them. So it was a real wake-up call for us, for me at least, to realize that trying to align your values with the amount of time you invest into those values is very important. And if we're not aware of that, then we're spending or wasting a lot of our time doing things which are not important for us, and yet we're doing them anyway. Because whether we sit in our bed all day or whether we're actively out there doing something, 24 hours ticks by, and then before you know it, you're on to the next day, and the next, and the next, and the next. Time waits for no man, or woman for that matter. But that's the quote, time waits for no man. So the importance in our life is to first of all figure out our core values, and then to pursue a life in accordance with those core values and to be persistent with that. I remember hearing this speech by this special forces leader, and his advice was, if you want to change the world, make your bed in the morning. And it's a famous video online, but I love that video because he says, making small, good decisions accumulates into a life of goodness and making important, big decisions. If you can't get the small things right, you really have no chance of making the big things right. And he says, even if you go out there having made your bed in the morning and it's a really tough day and you're really down and you get beaten up, guess what? When you go to bed at night, your bed is nice and made. So make your bed in the morning if you want to change the world. Here's advice from our founder. If God is a personal God, what should be connected to God? Can your body be connected to God? No. It's your heart that is connected. Human beings are to live with a vertical heart with the first cause, the personal God at the axis. Just as the earth rotates on its angle-adjusted axis and moves in its day-by-day, 365-day course around the sun, we should be living, revolving around God. No matter how much time flies by, no matter how fiercely the storms rage, our inner force, must withstand the intrusions of the environment and persevere persistently. Persistently, that's the key. Compound effect, persistent, be persistent. Once you get your core values lined up, once you realize that you are aiming towards achieving your core values, developing your core values, expanding your core values, once you are on that path, be persistent on it. Withstand the intrusions of the environment and persevere persistently on the path of growth. Only in this way can we welcome the new spring and become a seed, the original source of a second life, which can be planted again. So being consistent and plodding. Darren Hardy, who wrote that book that was reviewed at the beginning of our sermon, he also has another video online, you can check it out on YouTube, where he interviews this grandfather. And he's a very successful man and very humble. He didn't want to have his name put out there or anything, but Darren Hardy's way of getting to him was saying, I would like to interview you. At first he said, I'd like to interview you and put you on my Success magazine, blah, blah, blah. And the guy said, no. I don't want any fame or notoriety or anything like that. I'm very low profile. So he said, well, I'd like to interview you so I can document what you have learned, the wisdom you have learned in your life, and I can document that and pass that on to the next generation in your family, people who will never have a chance to meet you in person. And he liked that idea because he felt that he has something that he can give. So Darren Hardy said, okay, in preparation for the interview, and this is over the phone, please write down all the things that you felt helped you achieve the success in your life that you have achieved. And he said, sure, great. So Darren Hardy went to his house, magnificent palatial estate, goes in, sits down, and this man comes in, and Darren Hardy is expecting him to bring a file with him, of all the things that he has learned. And of course, there's no file, so he says, did you do the preparation that I asked you to do in preparation for this interview? And he says, yes. And he wrote everything down on a piece of paper. And he gave the piece of paper to Darren Hardy, and Darren was a little perplexed, but he said, okay. He read it. He says, are you sure this is everything that has helped you to achieve the success that you have achieved? And he says, absolutely. And thank you. And so he said, well, the first point was there are only a few things that are important in every task. Learn how to do those things well. And they got stuck on that point for the next 2 hours. And he tried to explain. He said, I came from the Ukraine when I was a child, and we're evacuees, we're refugees, we come to America, we have no money, I couldn't even go to school because my parents couldn't afford it, or whatever. I had to work to support the family for that reason. And so I just learned how to read and write, but that's about it. So didn't consider myself to be very smart, but every job I had, I figured out, okay, what is the important part of this job? And I figured out what is the important part of this job, and I learned how to do those things very, very well. And that knowledge, that cutting out of all the extremities, of all the unimportant things, not trying to change everything, because again, he didn't consider himself to be very smart, just I can learn to do the things that have been done, I can learn how to do those things very well. Led to an accumulation of knowledge and skills and eventual success. So this elderly man said that many people will look at this list at the end of their life and go, yeah, that would have helped me to know way back, for me to know that, these things. And so anyway, I think he's giving a course on those things, and you can check it out online. But the point that I wanted to make was, This man obviously had the wisdom to understand his core values early on in life, understand what's important, and understand how to approach life in a very simple yet methodical way, and to be consistent over time, doing the right thing, learning the right things, not getting bogged down by all the distractions. And this again is our challenge in today's world. There are multiple distractions bombarding us every single day. And if we don't know our core values, and if we don't respect ourselves enough to pay attention and develop our core values, well, guess what? We're going to get pulled apart by all the distractions offered to us by news flashes, Facebook posts, YouTube this, whatever your vice is. You're going to get so distracted, but at the end of the day, you'll look back and you will have accomplished very little of what you set out to do. And that is the danger that we all face in today's world of distractions, is learning how to focus on what's really important. When they interview Warren Buffett and they asked him, what's your key to success? And he says, well, it was very simple really. I learned how to say no to 99 good ideas and find the one great idea. And that's a skill, because for most of us, we're pursuing all these good ideas. This seems like a good idea, and this is an interesting thing to read. And my gosh, when I go online onto YouTube, I can get stuck in there for hours, and I'm sure some of you know what I'm talking about. Maybe your vice is Facebook. Oh, I'm going on, oh, this connected to, oh, she knows him as well. Oh, what's he doing? Oh, where did they go on vacation? And oh, what are they up to? It's like, it's endless distraction. If we can write down our core value and put it on our desk or our computer every time we open it, oh, I wonder, oh, yeah, my core value, maybe I won't do that today. Maybe that way we can help ourselves to focus on what's really important, what's really pure, what's really good. And let's go back to that original quote from St. Paul. He said, he wrote, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Those are our core values. Please join me in prayer. Thank you so much, Heavenly Father, for guiding us and giving us so many opportunities in this world. We are so blessed to be in this country, this great nation of America, and yet we are so distracted by all the wonderful things around us. And we are so distracted by all the frivolous things around us that we pay little to no attention to our relationship with you, which is fundamental to our spiritual eternal life. Help us to cut through to all the distractions, and help us to develop our relationship with you, to develop our core values in life, to develop the talents that we have been blessed with, so that we can be a blessing to others, rather than be mangled and distracted and pulled into different pieces and have a fractional mind. Let us have a focused mind. Let us have a whole heart. Let us have a pure mind. Let us go forth in this world knowing who we are, knowing what we want to accomplish, knowing what we want to contribute to this world, and help us so that we do not allow ourselves to be distracted by all the things in this world. So thank you once again for reminding us that you are calling us, that you are wanting a relationship with each and every one of us, that you love each and every one of us deeply as your children. Help us to connect to you, help us to push away the smoke, the barriers, the complications, the distractions, so that we can have that connection with you, which is ultimately the most valuable thing in this world. So help us to understand that, help us to remember that, especially as we go into our next week. And we offer this prayer with gratitude in our hearts to you, in the name of Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you, and let's spend some time connecting, reconnecting, and staying connected. Thank you.